Welcome to Envision Radio from the United Way of Greater Charlottesville and the City of Promise, News Radio 98.9, 1070 AM WINA, Price and Markey, and what I think is officially fall.
Fall!
I think we're here. I think we're fully into fall. And it hasn't rained in a couple days, which I think is probably okay. Right?
I mean, it's raining somewhere. I mean,
it's raining somewhere. That is true. It is raining somewhere.
Natural disaster in Florida, but it's pretty dry here.
It's relatively dry here, but stay safe if you're in the path of that.
Absolutely.
This particular iteration of Mother Nature. We are here in the studio with Doreen and Lisa. Thank you guys for joining us. It's always fun to have. That side of the table hasn't been full in a while. So thank you guys for taking the time to hang out with us.
Thank you for inviting us.
So we are going to do the way we usually run this is it's a little bit about you guys and then about the work that you do and your work together, and we can take that in any form or fashion, right? And so let's start with getting to know you guys a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then we will draw lines to and through the work that you do.
Sure. Should I go first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I'm Doreen Bonnet. I am the executive director, co-founder, and a doula, a community-based doula with Birth Sisters of Charlottesville. I've been a doula in this community, supporting women of color primarily, for about 8 years, I think. My background was not doula work or even working in the birth-related field, but so I come from corporate America and done that work, and then I became aware of doula training that was happening in this community, and really because of the disparities for Black women. And so I figured I could somehow be a part of that. I didn't know what a doula was. I thought it was a midwife, and there's a difference. And so I said...
We should get into that.
Yeah, it's a difference. And so I was like, no, I don't think I want to be a midwife. But when I read what a doula was, and I was like, oh, that's kind of naturally who I am, right? I come from a background, I'm from Louisiana originally, and I come from a background of healers.
Okay.
And so people have told me that I had a very nurturing nature. So once I read what a doula was, and I was like, let me check this out. So I took the training and got hooked.
That's the best way to find a career.
The trajectory of my life, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, my name is Lisa Brown, and I am the Deputy Executive Director, co-founder, and also a working doula in this community. I've been a doula for about 6.5 years, and Doreen was my mentor.
Aww.
And so, similar to her, I fell into this kind of organically. I myself had some birth experiences, particularly my last one. I have an 11-year-old, and it was a pretty difficult birth. And I had been aware of Black women's disparity around maternal health, but it hadn't clicked that I myself would be at risk.
Sure. Yeah.
I certainly was aware and cared about those issues. And then when I had my son, there was kind of like a lot going on with his health. I found out he was diagnosed with autism, and that made me able to shift and think about, I would love to be a doula. Mm-hmm. I took the training, and the story goes on like that.
So what is the difference between a doula and a midwife?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so basically, a midwife is a trained professional, obviously, and they're the ones that actually deliver the babies. Okay? Whether they decide to deliver at the client's home or they're delivering, there are midwives in the hospitals as well, but they go through a medical training, right? And like I said, they're there to deliver the baby. A doula is a support person. It's also trained professionals. A support person, we support the client in helping them advocate for themselves. We educate them on the birth process. We teach them about comfort measures. And also, one distinctive thing about a doula is they're the person that is usually there with you through your entire journey. Like, we provide support to a mother prenatally, so we're having visits with them prior to their delivery. we're with them from the time that they think they're going into labor till maybe 2-3 hours after they deliver, wherever that might be, the hospital, at their home, in a birthing center. And then we follow up with them with postpartum visits. And so when clients are usually interacting with the medical staff, they might see a different doctor every time. Mm-hmm. And even when you're in the hospital, the doctors may change, the nurses may change, but we're the ones that are with them through the entire journey. And so, of course, we form this really beautiful bond with them. We get to know them. We get to know their families. We need to get to know their situations that they're with. And so that's the thing. That's pretty much the difference. We're pretty much a support person. I always tell people, a lot of times I say, imagine your sister that you really like, your auntie that you really like,
not the other one, not your other, not the other sister
that you like,
not the other
that
sister,
you have a good relationship with. Imagine those people, that kind of bond that you might have them, but they also have a level of education about the birth process. Mm-hmm. And have formed relationships with some of the individuals in the hospitals that you might be working with. So that's a kind of, that's kind of the feel. We have many of our clients that consider us family. Even today, I got an email, a text message yesterday from a client where we supported 3 of her children. Yeah.
Wow.
She
the
knows what I'm
whole
talking
clan.
about. The whole clan. And, so it was just really nice to hear that. So I told you what a midwife is and a doula, but then there's another distinction. Community-based doula. Okay? So, and that's what we are, community-based doulas. What we recognize, because of the disparities that our women of color, particularly Black women, experience, they're anywhere from 3 to 4 times as likely to deal with pregnancy complications. And so when you look at that, when we're working with clients, yes, we're educating, we're advocating, we're telling them what they can expect during their pregnancies, at birth, and postpartum, but there's additional layers that we also have to support them with. People refer to them as the social determinants of health.
Yes.
So we have dealt with clients who are having financial issues. We're dealing with clients who have partner violence issues, CPS issues, children that they're afraid might be taken away, mental health issues. I mean, really significant issues that are housing issues, homelessness issues. So all those things layered on top of you growing a baby in your body is a lot. So we, as community-based doulas, are trained to how to be with mothers who are going and families who are going through those experiences. Not that we have all the answers, we do have a scope, but we've learned about the resources that we can point them to help them navigate this. And then, I always tell, there's one of the biggest thing about being a doula is to be present to your client, to your mom, and whatever they may be experiencing. And your presence is enough. It really is a lot, and it's significant. Lisa probably has some other things to share.
Yeah, I'll just share that there is the work around doulas is evidence-based. Right. There's research that supports that having someone there during your birth does help with birth outcomes and your experience. The experience is key, too. There are a lot of people who have traumatic birth experiences, and so we're there to work with them intimately, to hold that space, and while giving birth, to honor the sacred moment in their lives. Let me just add, too, there's also evidence that shows that having someone who looks like you to be that person is significant as well.
Yeah, I think I read something that says that when a mother has a Black doctor, if you're a Black mother and you have a Black doctor, across racial backgrounds, that means white mothers do better, Black mothers do better, do better.
Correct.
With a Black doctor.
That's right.
You're going to live more, your mortality rates drop.
That's right.
Well, there's a comfort level.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. And you think about, let's just say, I worked in corporate America, and you can say this about just about any job. When you're on that job, you're kind of on.
Yeah.
All right, you're on. And then when you get home, you're like, I can relax. okay, when a mother is going into a doctor's appointment and they don't see somebody that's like them, they're kind of on. There's maybe a subtle distrust happening. There's this idea of they may not understand what I'm going through. They may not get it. But then when they walk in and there's a black doctor and maybe even a female black doctor, they know, okay, I only have to explain so much. This person is likely to get what I'm under. And so you can relax. And when you relax physically and all that stuff, it's amazing how that can contribute to you having a slightly more positive experience, right? Because you're not holding on, you're not contracting.
Yeah.
When you guys talk about, so the big, if you look at anything sort of from the CDC or from the NIH, the big things they report on are obviously mortality. It's infant mortality, it's maternal mortality, and that is clearly important. But what I'm hearing is that it's more than that. I mean, if you take top line metrics, right, we're saying, that is the thing that will capture the headlines, right? But what is the stuff that falls underneath that, right? Because you could make the argument theoretically that, like, okay, we could talk about advances in technology, and there are things that will drop that number theoretically, and people are investing a lot of money in that. But what I'm hearing is that there's a much more intimate sort of entire bucket of things, right? And I mean, talk a little bit about what some of those things are, right? And the way, because it strikes me that, a lot of what the work that you do and the work that I do and a lot of these things, we always talk about earlier intervention, and we just keep getting earlier and earlier.
Yeah.
We might as well start at the beginning.
Right. Exactly. At the beginning. That's exactly
at the birth,
right?
That's exactly
we keep talking about how can we get earlier and earlier and earlier, and why we should just start at the beginning.
That's part of our mission.
So we were invited to present at a conference in Seattle a couple of weeks ago, and one of the sessions talked about preconception care. Okay. Which that's not what we do currently. We do have some clients who are usually repeat clients that's calling us and, hey, we're thinking about getting pregnant, right?
Sure.
But so preconception care is an intriguing thing to do because some of the reasons that our mothers may be experiencing some of the complications, there's so many things. There's how they're treated in the hospitals by medical staff sometimes, what they're living with right now, like whatever their current circumstances are right now. But there's something called allostatic load or weathering. So this is the impact of all those microaggressions, all the racism, all the things that a Black individual in this country face through the course of their lives, right? And so the culmination of all those things before you're even pregnant can have an impact on your capacity to have a successful, healthy, thriving birth in experience. And so, that's just something that we are aware of because we intimately are in the middle of it many times with our clients.
Yeah, and I think some other things that I would share is, yes, so the mortality rates are high. What doesn't get talked about a lot are the near misses, the morbidity where people were injured or they have long-lasting health complications that go into their next pregnancy. If you have high blood pressure, is that going to create cardiovascular issues for you ongoing? These are the kinds of things. And, Doreen touched on it. It's that structural racism, racialized medicine that is that is deep. That piece is really impacting our folks, right? So we're not going to accept the blame that Black folks, because you're Black, this is why you're sick.
Right.
Right? No, that's not the case. It's what's going on around us. So you do have the social determinants of health, but you have those feeders, right? The structural racism, racial medicine, what's going on in terms of surveillance and policing of lives and all of those things.
I want to ask an intentionally cynical question because I want your take on it, and you're nodding because that is my posture as a person. But I'm curious in your experience in it. So, when you guys are obviously doing very intimate work, and we're talking about, and I have been I've been the passenger to two births of my two children, and I in those moments think a lot about things like if X happens, then what, right? Am I in the position to be the guy that yells at the nursing staff? Turns out I am. But thinking about, do people have that? So I think for you, I was, it's like there is something to just getting what you need, even if the outcome's positive, even if it doesn't radically change the outcome. I think there's a qualitative piece of that. The cynical question is, how important is that relative to then the environment that we are bringing these kids back out into? Right, so we have this kind of duality of experience of we want all of these mothers to have a high quality medically, quantitatively, but also qualitative experience. Right, they get what they need, they feel valued, they don't especially in an area with a research hospital, they don't feel like they're being objectified and all this stuff. Okay, cool. Now the kid's born. What happens next, right? And are we putting enough energy into then when you walk out of those double doors, right? Because you could argue that good experience, bad experience, X, Y, otherwise, when that kid goes out into an environment that we understand for the folks that look like us hasn't always been the best. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying either is more or less valuable, but I am, I'm interested in the combination of those two things and how we bring them closer together.
We are so invested in that we have extended postpartum support, for example. And so we don't step off once you have a baby. We're still in it with you. We know that during postpartum, people experience perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, right? That's going to impact how you parent, whether you can make those attachments. So yes, we also are encouraging people to, well, one thing I say is we don't empower people. We give them the information. We help them along the way. They are empowered already. And what they have to recognize is their power, right? And so they then walk forward with that. A lot of times they're walking forward with that in terms of how do they care for their children when they go to the doctor's office and are able to speak up for their children. That speaking up shows up at school. That speaking, and, shows up in meetings about IEPs. It shows up along the way. And not that we're responsible for that, but of course, a really good start surrounded by people who care about you and are invested in how your family is. I would say a good number of our clients have really supportive people in their lives, and where they don't, we fill in those gaps. We are not just working with the mom. We're working with her partner. We are working with her mother or whoever is also there for her and invested in the birth of the baby. The postpartum support is significant.
She talked about PMADs, which some people, depending on who you talk, they don't know PMADs, but they know postpartum depression, right? Which is part of that, right? And it's such a significant piece. And like Lisa said, we do, like our core services, when you get a perinatal doula, you prenatal, labor and delivery, and then a minimum of 2 to 3 postpartum visits. But we add an additional extended postpartum where mothers can take advantage of our support for a full year.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay? So, but what's interesting about this is that our mothers, we are still learning how to support mothers of color, Black mothers, in receiving postpartum support, because we are not as accustomed to having someone coming into our home saying, let me wash these dishes for you. Why don't you go take a nap? I'll watch the baby. We're not as accustomed to that. We have one of our doulas who supports Black mothers as well as white mothers, and she says the difference is dramatic.
Is that right?
It's dramatic in terms of what their needs
accepting
are.
care,
care, receiving care,
care in your home.
Yeah, so it's completely different. And so we have to learn. We're learning one of the key things is how do we meet our clients where they are, right? And so we have to learn that, and many times we have some clients that will take advantage of that postpartum, extended postpartum, and then, I don't know, maybe a month or two, let's like, okay, we're good. And then 2-3 weeks later, we hear through the grapevine that they're struggling.
Yeah.
And so we might call them and say, hey, what's up? What's going on?
Sure.
And so I think sometimes we, as a culture, sometimes we're accustomed to suffering.
Yes.
Like it's almost normal. And so we don't recognize it as this is something that you can receive support from.
Yeah.
And so, so you talk about, how do we continue? We try to stay in touch with our mothers, and we also try to create programming that is educational and informative, but also eases the burden. So, a lot of mothers, when we last year we do a holiday gift card giveaway. And we gave $75 gift cards away to mothers. Use it however you want to use it.
Not just our clients.
Not just our clients, but if you are a mother of color and you're currently pregnant, or you delivered within the year, you can get this money. And so we did. One of the questions we did ask is, well, one, how might you use this money? The top things are like diapers by far.
Sure.
Baby equipment, groceries. Those are like the top things, right?
Yeah, sure.
And then the other question is, what are your needs as a pregnant person in this community? And you would think, the tangible things. I need more diapers. I need this and this. And those did come out. But what came out this year was a lot of need for emotional support. Like they're feeling stress. They're worried about childcare, like how they're going to, I lost my job. I can't catch the bus because it gives me motion sickness, so transportation is an issue.
Or childcare costs
exactly.
a gajillion dollars.
So all those things, that I guess that goes back to when I talked to you about community-based doulas. Those are all the things that we're dealing with on top of the pregnancy. So we try to do programming that would just chill. Let's just give you a moment to chill.
Is it like a group setting? Do you bring pregnant mothers together as a group to do?
Yeah, we do. We have something called Mamas of Color Meetup, and we've done things. They're educational and just fun. Like we had a painting class one time. We made soap scrubs, but we also had some fellows from UVA talk about diabetes. So we try to do a blend. We have something called the Brown Baby Bump Love Bath, which is kind of a meditation.
BBBL? No,
Brown
Baby Bump.
You need the right number of B's in that acronym, because you almost got us into some FCC trouble. You need
I've been a part of this since the onset, and I have to do that.
I was sitting here trying to count it.
Everybody forgets the bump. They forget the bump part.
I was like, Brown Baby.
Go back and do the bump.
Yeah, and so that's just an opportunity. It's online once a week at 9:00 on a Tuesday night, and for 15 minutes, come on, be in your pajamas, and let's just relax. Let's just chill. Let's let you connect with your baby, that you're growing right now. Begin to form that bond, and just relax.
Yeah.
So those are the types of things. That's not the only program, but we are also very aware that is a significant component of what we do.
If you're just jumping in, this is Envision Radio from the United Way of Greater Charlottesville and City of Promise, News Radio 98.9, 1070 AM WINA. Price and Markey here with the founders, the operators, the wonderful women behind Birth Sisters here in Charlottesville. I have a lot of questions, but I'm really curious about this. Something you mentioned about you have a complex medical process happening. You have that in the context of, and I don't want to make the assumption, but are the majority of your clients women? Are they affluent? Are they living in poverty? Are they both? Are they more?
Or both.
They're both, yeah.
If you qualify for Medicaid, your services are free for us.
Okay.
Cool.
And it varies. So I would say anywhere from 70 to 75% of the clients that we get do qualify for Medicaid.
Okay.
But we do get affluent clients. We have those as well.
Sure.
And it's just on they pay on a deep sliding scale, depending on what they can pay at the time. But yeah, we notice too that there's not much difference in some of their experiences in pregnancy.
Based on class, yeah.
So
no,
Hold on. Hold on.
Yes.
You said that way too calmly.
No, I
can see that.
No.
Well, it's
Come
just
on.
like people are like, you're rich and you're black, so you're not experiencing racism. But you
No.
are.
That's not what I'm
racism.
saying. But I'm saying your experience as a parent is deeply influenced by the amount of money you have. Period. Full stop. Right?
But this
If
is
you can
the one
afford
area,
child.
it's
But
not.
you're having
Okay,
bad experiences
okay.
and you got money.
Okay, but I want to talk about that, right?
Yeah.
Because we understand that if we talk about social determinants, that is, if you want to boil it down, and I'm the cynic, but even this is relatively uncynical, it's about money. You can afford childcare. You can afford all of the things. You can afford diapers. You can afford groceries, and it doesn't matter. You become, at a certain level, you're inflation-proof, and that's what we're all talking about, right? We're talking about how expensive it is to have kids, which it is. But you can afford it. There is that Maslow's hierarchy of need in which your basic needs are taken care of all of the time, right? So you have these two little children. Complexity, though it is always complex and tiring, your basic needs are taken care of, right? That's much different for a family or a particularly single mother living in poverty. And there's a lot of, I'm not going to draw on like too many threads, but we think of also like two-parent homes, right? There are more two-parent homes for people who are middle class and wealthy. Anyway, I want to hear more about this that you've found, which is a surprise to me. It is surprising to me that those experiences are not more disparate based on level of income.
If you look into the birth community, birth world, we're talking about this like we're talking about police violence.
Okay.
That's how deep it is. Okay. Because wearing a hoodie does not, wearing a hoodie or a suit doesn't impact that, correct?
Sure.
Like encountering police violence and police mistrust and all of those things are happening.
Sure.
So I would give you cynicism back, right?
Yes.
My thing would be when people are calling us, they're calling us because they're afraid they're going to die.
Okay.
This is what they say
This is
to us.
This is something that we hear.
Yes.
Like, what's worrying you? Like, when I first visit, like, what was your concern?
Yes.
I'm afraid I'm going to die.
And when does that, is there a time that typically people reach out to you? Like is it like is it
varies.
like, okay.
It varies. You mean at
What time
point in
when
their
they're pregnant?
pregnancy?
Yeah, it's like I'm
Talking
wondering
about-
if like it's a response to, hey, I have like been to my first 2 OB appointments. This jabroni talked over my head for 2 hours. I need support. Is it I'm 9 months in, I'm really worried about the actual physical process of giving birth? Is it I've just found out I'm pregnant. I want someone to walk through the whole thing. Is there any, like, do you find that there is a time? Is it really?
All of those. There's so many reasons on why certain mothers will call us. Some mothers don't want to talk about their pregnancy until they feel like I'm good.
That's right. Sure.
So they may not even us. They won't. They may not even call.
Or share with anyone.
And some mothers don't think they need the support
Right.
earlier. I think probably in the second and third trimester is when we likely to get calls. We do get some calls early. We've gotten calls the day the person has delivered.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
The day they have
The day
already
they have the
delivered?
baby.
We actually
Yes.
do need help.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
Well, and sometimes it's not. It doesn't always necessarily come from them. It comes from who's supporting them. It might be a midwife. It might be
A
I know
spouse,
there was
maybe.
it was a midwife that
mothers
called me
and-
one time for a home birth, and midwife is a white woman, and this client was her birth process. Something was stalling. Was not progressing like she wanted, and she said, Doreen, could you just come and talk to her? And she says, I have a feeling there's maybe more going on. And she says, I'm a white woman, so I went to her, the client's house, met her dog, her little child, and we sat down, and she settled, and within 30 minutes her water broke. And I'm like, okay, here we go. I thought I was having a visit. We got to have a baby.
Glove up.
And so, and it goes to like this, what we were talking about, just holding or contracting and not being able to relax. And then when you have somebody that looks like you and can really understand your lived experience, because maybe they have a similar lived experience. They are able to relax.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go back to your question about the socioeconomic of, remember Serena Williams?
That's what I was going to bring. I was just about to bring that up. That was
Beyonce, the
complications
that they had. With Serena, she's been very vocal about that she felt like she wasn't listened to. Serena Williams.
Serena Williams.
Right? So,
and the track star,
and
whose name I can't recall.
So it's a common thing. And then also, you also made the point about, if you have, you're more affluent, you have the money for the basic needs. The emotional impact of what Black mothers are going through, no matter how much money they have, no matter whether they're able to take care of these basic needs, there's still a strong emotional support. There may be a slightly nuance in the kind of emotional challenges that they're having, but it's still there, and it still needs to be addressed, and it's still important and significant. So I don't, there's the money thing too. There's the money that we can look at this way, but this emotional component and its capacity to have an impact on how you carry that baby and how you grow that baby or deliver that baby and then take care of that baby is significant.
Is it Allison Felix, the track person?
No, she had issues too.
Yeah, she talks about her birth as well.
So she had an experience. She had a difficult experience, a near-death experience. But we actually recently had someone who died.
Oh,
at home by herself, and I'm gonna have to look it up.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I'm over here typing.
You keep talking. I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So, just to pivot a little bit. How did Birth Sisters of Charlottesville come about? Were you sitting at the coffee shop together, like you're both doulas? He's like, we could be doing so much for these women, Black women who look like us, and was it on a napkin? You're like, we're gonna call it this. We're gonna go to these healthcare providers. We're gonna tell them that this is a necessary and evidence-based need, and with this thing, mortality rates are gonna drop. Tell us a little bit about how this business came to be, because being a doula, helping people, being someone writing your name down and having a number that you help that person, you help the next person, but how do you culminate that into a business?
Yes, so we have a kind of an interesting journey in history. Both Lisa and I were a part of an organization prior to Birth Sisters of Charlottesville. We were doulas with that organization with a similar mission that we have, right? And so in that process, that particular organization dissolved, and we were like, we cannot let this mission go. Me, Lisa, and two other individuals who are also co-founders, Charles C. Stratton, Kia Pierre, I want to say their names.
Shout out.
Shout out to them.
Yeah,
We you know what, four of us, we are not going to let this mission go. It's too important, right? And so none of us thought that we would be leaders of an organization like this. And so we talked to the funders. Lisa and I operated for 9 months without compensation to make sure that this stayed.
And we met every week.
Every week, long meetings. Oh my God, long meetings. Yeah. And to make sure that this stayed in place. And so once we got to a certain point, and then the powers that be, like funders, realized, oh, they serious, right? We're serious. And so then, more of the funding came in, and we got really tremendous funding from the community, which we're appreciative of. And so that's kind of how we funded. We reorganized. We came up with our values, with our mission and vision, and we incorporated. And here we are.
So that was amazing. Also, it was very.
We were at the coffee shop.
I don't know if you believe in divine things happening, but that was happening at the end of 2019 into the early parts of 2020. We became incorporated in May of 2020, and we're still doing work in the community during the pandemic. We were kept out of the hospitals for a while, but we were doing support by telephone and Zoom.
Yep.
And so we were still doing the work, and the CDC, if you go in and look at CDC report, the rise in maternal mortality for Black women happened also during that time.
Sure.
Right? Sure. You can imagine. You don't have anyone. At the very beginning, you didn't even have your partner.
Right. Yeah, that was a little bit of a wild moment.
And then you could have one person.
Sure.
Before that, we had wild style. We had 5, 6 people in the room.
Is that right?
Yeah. Back in the day, talking about back in the day, you could have your grandma was there.
Is that right?
My grandmama, both my grandparents was at my birth. My mama, my daddy, that's 5 people.
Is that right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. My grandma did not miss none of me and my siblings' birth. She came all the way from Orange County. She had somebody drive, but she couldn't drive.
So I want you to imagine this.
To UVA.
When you have that many people in the room, and then the baby actually comes out, the screams.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think about.
That is kind of hilarious to think about.
They said 0 people
Given
now.
the fact
I'm like,
my daughter was born March of 2020.
Yeah.
And you weren't able or you weren't?
Huh?
You were able to be in the room or you weren't?
You know me better than that.
You said, just I got a little pain when you said 0 people in the room. Can you imagine?
No.
A mother.
So let me ask you this.
A first-time
was
mother.
there any... I understand the health reason for that. You can probably draw, I guess, a pretty clear line of why that decision was made. Was that made for any reverence? I mean, like, how do you make that decision that broadly and that sweepingly?
Are you talking about the hospitals? Because they're the ones that made that decision.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and it seems like you can get your mind around the rationale. We're not super sure how this spreads and how well, and it is a hospital after all, where there are people of varying levels of health. Okay. But it seems like they should have been able to control for that without just shutting that door entirely. Am I wrong about that?
Yes, you're right. However, not being prepared for a pandemic, being short-staffed, all the things, and so we there were so many unknowns, and not enough information about transmission. There were lots and lots of factors. But I agree with you. That should have been a protected, area. Right? Yes.
Role.
Exactly. When we go with someone to a C-section back in the surgery room, we go back there sometimes.
Sure.
And we dress.
Put me in a gown.
Exactly.
Put me in the sure.
Right.
You put me in a hazmat suit. I don't whatever.
Exactly.
Like, that I did, and I found that for me it was and to answer your question, yes, I was there.
Okay.
But
I thought so.
It was but I found it odd that like that. It struck me as odd that they approached me. They were like, "Hey," and I was like, "I will go to prison."
It feels like, but it also feels like a form of policing. It feels like policing.
When you said they approach you. Could you tell me a little bit
more?
So
this was COVID for this was when hospitals were shutting down.
Yeah, May.
And so they were just starting to have that conversation of who's in, who's out, who's when, who's where. All the NCAA tournament was getting canceled. My paternity leave was set up. And then it all just because this is clearly about me. So it was the first time friends of mine who had their kids later in the year, into April, into May, into June, they actually had to have those conversations. Mm-hmm. And I think, from what I know, everybody managed to get in before things got really, really, really locked up tight. But it was one of those things, you try and consider all the different variables, and you get like 1/1000th of the way through. That was never one of them, right? You go through your what ifs. What if we have to have a C-section? What if? You never thought like, oh, what if I get kicked out? And so it was even that being in the litany of things you're trying to control for. I found interesting, but my parents were in the lobby.
Yeah.
The
your daughter's birth is what you mean.
Yeah, the Domino's guy left the food outside the hospital, so it was
there's dynamics that are local also, right? So we, like you mentioned before, we are in a community with only 2 birthing hospitals. We have a birth center and
there's not
birth.
a whole lot of options.
So that makes
choices.
a big difference about a lot of things. And at that time, the majority of the births are always at one of the places, right?
Sure, yeah.
One of the research institutions and hospitals. They're always, the majority are there.
Sure.
But they were even more at that time. People were being considered at risk that necessarily might not have been.
You're saying more people than usual were giving birth at the
yes.
really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there was like some things going on around Medicaid, people who had Medicaid not being able to birth at the other hospital, not because of the hospital, but because there were no providers who were in the community accepting Medicaid, right?
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
Who also had privileges to deliver at the other hospital.
Oh, really?
So in that time frame, that
Okay.
other hospital was essentially not really taking
Yeah.
as many births. They were still birthing, but not as many births. Likely not as many people of color going there.
Sure.
And so you get a system that's inundated.
So it overwhelmed the other hospitals.
Yeah,
That's right.
That makes sense. That makes
exactly.
sense.
Which has an impact.
Yes, that's
Sure.
how we
I mean,
see.
there's
A lack of
people in,
services
people
is a
out.
problem
Yeah,
when
yeah,
you're
yeah.
pregnant.
Yes.
Yeah.
We look at birth outcomes across our community.
Okay.
We're not just, they concentrate on themselves. We're looking at what's going on across the community.
Okay.
And so if one is being so heavily impacted, then you're going to see all of these things. There were a lot of travel nurses and unfamiliar people in those systems. It was a lot going on at that
Interesting.
time. Mm-hmm.
I'm not pausing for effect. I'm just making sure because I'm going to keep rolling. You look like you were deep into something.
You mentioned earlier, can you imagine?
Yeah.
And I can't imagine. I was in the hospital during COVID for like 2 weeks by myself.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And I tell everybody, I'm like, it was one of the most traumatic experience. I wasn't even having no baby. It was the fact that I felt that there was no one there.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was just.
Yeah.
So I cannot imagine a mother, and that's what I was talking about.
A young
Yes.
new mother. Think about
Yes.
that.
That's what I was talking about, like policing. It's like, you're not gonna let me in to see my child. Like I can't.
Right.
So say they're like no, and you're like, well, this is my child. I'm going up in here, and now you're in handcuffs. You're at the hospital. They say you can't come back. The mama, of your child in the hospital with the baby. She gotta get out of the hospital and find out you know where to be found. I just feel like there were always gonna be you can and you can't, based along racial dynamics that caused issues that weren't planned for, obviously. And so that's what I think about, like the policing aspect of you can or cannot come. And, like, the way you take that at a hospital, rightfully so emotionally, as a black person.
Yeah.
And as a partner to a person that's in a very vulnerable and dangerous position.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, people come to you and say, I'm afraid to die. Like, and not having somebody that you love and care for with you.
Yes.
It's significant.
And you have their concern. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
their concern about liabilities.
Yeah, there's a lot.
That's what they have a concern.
And when you think about it, obviously, we all know, we all went through the pandemic. It was like anything any of us have ever experienced. And not that I'm defending the hospital systems at all, but you know how when you have an issue and you don't even know what's going on, you might try to implement something that goes way beyond.
That's right.
Which and then hopefully you learn from that experience. You learn that, we should have done it this way, that way. And at the time of the pandemic, doulas have always been in place, but I don't think enough of the hospital systems, some of them in this community, really understood the positive, significant impacts of what doulas can do. They know now.
They know now. That's good.
They know now. And so I think that there is so much going on, and we just to give you a difference right now. So since that time, we have been working with, I'll just say, we've been working with UVA. We have relationships with the OBs, the leadership of that team, and actually they reached out to us and said, hey, we want to talk to you all. And so we meet with them on a periodic basis. We share with them very candidly what our clients have experienced working within their hospital system. They have listened in many ways. They have tried to implement change protocols, procedures, policies to make things better. We also now have UVA badges that we can come and go. We are now not visitors because we were considered visitors. Now we're part of the care team, and so we can go in with badges, and we don't have to follow the visitor policy, and so we can provide that support to our clients. So we're making headway in terms of like access, in terms of like sharing candidly in hopes that things will begin to change. We're not out of the woods. There's still some things that we hear from clients and from doulas about things that happen. So we still have work to do, but we're keeping at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I can recall a time when I had a client who she had preeclampsia, and that meant that she had to be hospitalized until she gave birth, was safe to give birth to her baby. So she was like 30 weeks. She could, like 28 weeks. She couldn't give birth until 34. And one of the things that came up was people were coming in her room without introducing themselves.
Sure.
Disregarding her privacy, not, just like acting as though she was just a body in the bedroom, with a body there, right? Instead of acknowledging her or knocking on her door, which is like a 101 or patient care.
Right.
And she kept having to express herself about that.
Mm-hmm.
Even after putting a sign on the door, it kept continuing to be a problem. Because we had relationships with certain people, who can make a difference at the hospital, I immediately was able to do an email to follow up on her advocacy. She did her job as taking care of herself and advocating for herself. She just needed another person to kind of step in. And it shouldn't be that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was glad to be able to do that.
It is, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the kind of, that's why the relationships are so important with the hospital systems and others in the community that support the clients that we have, so those relationships are important. And, the more we're in the hospitals working with our clients, the staff knows us, the nurses begin to know us, the doctors begin to know us. And so when we have a client that comes in, we're going to the hospital and we know who's on call, and it's like, okay, here's the deal,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we get a sense of that. We also are invited to UVA staff community meetings. So we get to hear what happens behind the scenes. We're sitting at the table with them as well. So that's all part of this work. That's all part of, we hit it. Obviously, we're working directly with our clients, understanding what their needs are and trying to do what we can to meet those needs. And if we can't, who can? So that's one level. And then we work with the hospital systems to see, how can we work together to provide better support to the clients so that there's better outcomes. And then we also do things on a state level or maybe a federal level. Lisa and I are both sat on state task force that dealt with maternal health in some way. We are advocating at the state level because we do recognize that, it's a national problem, but, each state has their own unique things that are going on that needs to be addressed. So, it's a multi-layered approach in addressing disparities in maternal health.
Have you found the current state of affairs on women's bodies to be affecting your work?
See, that's funny because I was going to ask, is it getting better? That was the exact question I was going to ask.
Have you found that is affecting your work negatively or in any capacity with the way of the world?
I'm going to tell you that I will feel encouraged one time, and then I'm like, what in the world happened? Why did this happen to this particular client? Who was not looking out for them in terms of not us, but like what's going on with the healthcare provider,
like policy, right?
And the policy, and like what is actually going on? So I feel like we are on a regular basis. We're not off the ledge with telling them things. Something you said a while back in this interview was being objectified by a research institution, right? We're friends with them, but yes, I'm also part of this. My family is deeply rooted in this community. The blood in this soil runs out of my people, right? So I have seen issues that I feel like have impacted people I love. We all know about concerns about whether they acknowledge our pain. We've witnessed them
that
say,
study went.
"Oh, you
that was
can't
crazy.
be
They don't think you're hurting.
Yeah.
That is bad for business."
You want to talk to Dr. Oliver about that. That's crazy.
I took that very personally. You extract from your community, and we are hearing that you don't think we feel the same, feel pain the same way as other people. That's where I talk about that racialized
medicine,
medical medicine, but also medical education, right? And that there are some things that are still entrenched in medical education that misinforms people. People are still believing that people have different pelvis, right? Based on their race.
Okay.
Right? You have different pelvises, but not based on race.
Okay.
You do have,
Right.
There's a lot of racialized medicine.
Right, exactly. Right. And the pain thing being one of them. Yeah.
Is there, I mean, how legislation proof, I mean, nothing is, right? But I mean, as an organization, right, are you guys beholden to the zeitgeist in the same way that, say, a heavily sort of pro or anti-LGBTQ organization would be, that say either this is like the thing that everyone's talking about and federal funding in the state, is a lot of your funding tied into kind of the mechanisms, or are you like, look, we get a little bit of it, but really we can keep doing what we're doing no matter what the sort of political, which way the political winds blow, right? Because we think about this a lot, doing a lot of education work. I'm going, if I do away with the Department of Education, Price needs a new skill. So there is some of that, and some of these broad, big, particularly advocacy issues where once you hit a certain level, you have to be aware of the fact that, like, the politicization of the what I would consider a human rights issue has a big effect of your ability to do your work.
It does. And who's your audience for this program?
Whoever's going to listen to it.
Okay, do you have an idea of your demographics or anything like that at this point?
Yeah, I mean, the station is mostly, it leans middle to upper middle, suburban.
Okay. The reason I ask that is that we are very mindful of that, because we are aware, we are an organization made of women of color, supporting only women of color, all right? And if you don't understand or have an appreciation for the fact that Black women and babies are dying because of the maternal, the disparities that are happening, if you don't understand that, then you don't understand why it is necessary to have an organization that is specific to address these needs. And so there are times when we promote some of the things we do, but we're also very mindful about where we go and with this, because Lisa and I are the only two staff people in this organization. We hold a lot.
Is everybody else volunteer? Is it volunteer?
Well,
our
doulas are contractors,
okay.
Independent contractors. Okay. But we're the staff, so we're holding a lot, and so we try as best as we can to manage that which we have to hold. And so there are times where we'll be very selective in who we engage with, and how we engage, because yes, we would like to be fighting and really and we do that when we can, but we also mindful that it is very important for us to have the mental, emotional, physical capacity to do the core of this work.
Yeah.
Right. And we've had funders that have offered support to us, and in terms of like getting the message out about what we do, commercial, whatever, we've had that. And we always said, where are you distributing this commercial?
Why is that? Because
one of the reasons is we are aware we have received comments from people and individuals.
Some people don't get it, or why you need to exist,
and so they will get the complaints. We're like, well, why can't you do this? What is it? Why is it necessary?
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about Black maternal, Black breastfeeding week, when we had a whole campaign, we had people saying, well,
why just them?
Why just them?
Sure.
Why just them?
Exactly.
You know how it is.
And it's not that we're trying to hide or anything. It's just that we're trying to manage our capacity.
Sure. And so I would. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that's interesting. And I think the perspectives of that are very interesting. And a potential argument to that would be like, okay, like kick rocks then. Right? Like, I think there's particularly a posture for something that you know is important and the work's important that, like, you don't. Here's what my dad told me one time. My dad told me when I started this job, he goes, hey, listen, if you're doing a thing that is focused on a particular people that are very important to you, that you understand have been historically marginalized, if half the people don't like it, given the demographics of this country, you are doing your job well.
Period.
And so to a degree, there is that. And then he said something which I really love, which I said on here before. He said, if someone caught you walking on water, they'd say it was because you couldn't swim. and I only say that to say that I think there's an element of this that a lot of the work that small organizations, and particularly small minority-led organizations, do is handicapped by the fact that we're afraid that people aren't going to love it enough to keep it going. And I think that there's an element of like, look, okay. Like, okay, right? And so I just wonder, and I'd love your opinion on that, of just like, is there a point where, like, that's fine, you're still going to hear about it, and we're going to keep talking about it, and we're going to keep moving it, and you can tell me 8 ways to the weekend how you don't like it, or it's not the right thing for you. Yeah. And that's cool. Go shop somewhere else.
And that's in part because we have, we've experienced backlash. So
I can imagine.
And so one of the things we always say is, okay, so to continue the work to support people, though, right? We're not circumventing what is the larger issue, this social justice mission. That's our mission. If you go back and look at our mission. However, I have to be able to go back in those places.
Sure.
So
exactly,
there are certain times when we have to be
diplomatic.
Diplomatic.
Total line.
Sure.
Diplomatic. Yeah, that's the exact word I use. And it's really tough. So there are times when I pitch to Doreen, or maybe she pitched to me because it's just too close to our heart. We want to go harder, right? But we can't necessarily, because we have to go. We're here for that mama.
Sure.
And we're going to help her address those issues. So sometimes it may look like we've had doctors in our location talking directly to the client and hearing the client out, or not talking to him, hearing from the client, hey, you jacked up my life with this situation, that you were not kind, you didn't hear me, and we've had projects that related to that, where one called Listening to the Living, where we invited healthcare providers to listen to actual situations and voices and witness
That's a great name.
For them what people are saying about their birth experience. But they could not chat. They could not respond. They could not ask questions.
I love that
really?
lot.
It was called listening.
Listening to the living. Yeah. And we had 4, was it 4 or 3? 3 or 4, I can't remember now. Black women who had experiences that shared so candidly what they went through that you couldn't even it was just like,
I think hearing a story from a person from a person I didn't know things were bad. I was just in there doing my job. Maybe I didn't have my head down when you was in 6 rooms down. But having to hear from a person that something bad happened to in your place of work, in your field of study, I think it's very powerful.
Yeah, it is.
And we, we've had those experiences, obviously, and we've helped our clients navigate those too. But we also had some beautiful ones too.
Sure, of course.
There have been amazing experiences on top of that. So, this work is extremely rewarding and extremely necessary. And going back to your point about, sometimes I think we have to wear so many hats sometimes. We may be frustrated with the system and do what we can. And so whatever that energy, whatever that takes place, whatever pulls in me to do that, within an hour, I need to be sitting down with this mother, talking to her about her experience, listening to what she has. And so it's like, shift to that. And that's not always an easy thing.
Yeah.
Because at some respects, you're not going to feel like you're fully present. And mothers need individuals that are working with them that are fully present to their experience.
Let me ask you one last question before we get you out of here. You two working together. Right. What is the dynamic? What is the, like, how does, how have you guys, has relationship changed over the years, right? That you've been, right? Because I think
I'm
that.
about to divorce her,
Yeah.
first of all.
Yeah.
It's like a married couple. It really is like a married couple.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that, because I think in general in organizations that have, duality of leadership and obviously different people in similar roles or at similar levels, there's always interesting dynamics there. So I'd love to just hear a little more about, how do you guys do that? How do you guys separate work? How do you, are you, who's good cop, who's bad cop? Does it change? Just like, how do those things interact?
Wow, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question.
I would say we interchange the good cop, bad cop thing.
Yeah,
definitely.
we do.
Yeah.
But let's be real. We all bring to our experiences whatever our lived experiences are,
That's
whatever
right.
traumas we've had, whatever stuff we have. So we bring that into how we interact. Definitely interact as leaders, right?
Sure.
I love this woman so much.
Yeah. It's the respect
and
thing.
then we never ever doubt each other's passion for this work ever. There's no
matter what
question.
goes
No
on.
matter what, we never ever doubt that. Have we had run-ins? And yes, we have. But I
Sure.
think that's all part of what it takes to run an organization like this, and I think it's part of it's also a display of how passionate we are
Exactly,
too.
yeah.
So definitely we have our dynamics, but I always go back to, like, look at what we've accomplished.
Right.
Yes.
We've accomplished a lot together.
Yeah, sure.
And we work very closely together. Some of us, we have this kind of, I don't know what the terminology is, but I usually work in the office 3 days a week. She does too, and so we overlap on a day. So, and we also try as best as we can to elevate self-care, because it's significant in this work.
Yeah.
Very significant in this work. Not only just for us, but for our doulas, because we have amazing doulas. We call them Birth Sisters, but they're amazing, and they're amazing on what they hold too. Not only with how they inform and educate and be present to their clients, but what they hold. And in doing that, they are also exposed vicariously to the trauma that clients are experiencing. So
Sure.
we
Sure.
make sure that we try to offer the self-care that could be available to them, to talk them through, give an opportunity to debrief experiences. But we're all personalities.
Yeah.
It's kind of the nature of who we are as people, as women, as Black women, as other women of color. We have our differences. We have our ideas and our concerns, and have we always been successful in how we navigate it? No, but we're learning. We're learning ourselves, and we're learning each other.
Last question quickly. If people want to reach out to you all, learn more about being a doula, maybe take doula trainings, how can they get in touch with you? What's the best way to reach you guys and find out more information?
So we have a website, Birth Sisters, Seville, so sisters with an S, Seville, CVILE.org. So if you go there, you can see a little bit about us, but you can scroll down and there's like a contact sheet. So you can send that, and whether you want to, interested in becoming a doula, whether you're interested in receiving care from us, or doula support, or just about anything. But I also want to point out that when you go to our website, there's this beautiful little button in the top right corner that says donate.
Amen. Amen.
Yes.
Donate.
Y'all heard that.
Donate. And so, we want to be able to continue to do this work, and we've been blessed. The community has been supportive, but we need support to continue to do this work. It's daunting, and our we didn't talk about our numbers, but we did mention that mothers are likely to experience complications 2 to 3 times, or 3 to 4 times, than white women. Birth Sisters of Charlottesville, since we started, we've never lost a mother, and we only had 1 infant loss, which was this year.
Yeah.
So we're doing the work.
Yeah.
And we're making an impact, and we're saving lives, literally.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yes.
Well, big thanks to you guys, to Doreen and Lisa, for joining us. And again, if you have ideas for the show, there's other incredible local folks we should talk to. Follow us on social media and all platforms at United Way Cville, at City of Promise, and the inbox is open. Who manages that inbox? Do you manage that inbox? You know there's an Envision at UnitedWayCville.org inbox?
But I've never
it's
seen
real. I'm going to start sending emails in there to make sure you're keeping up with it. Yeah. Yeah. And again, don't forget, this is birthsisterscville.org to get in touch with them, to learn about their services, and to join. Are you guys looking for folks to also join you on the work front? Do you need more birth sisters? Is that how you feel about staff-wise?
Yeah, eventually we will be training. We usually train once a year, but we didn't do it this year. So sometime next year we will be training more interested people who want to become doulas.
All right.
And if anyone wants to come and help with our Welcome Womb Boutique and kind of help us
we didn't even talk about the
Welcome
Welcome Womb Boutique. Is it okay for me to share what that is?
You got all the time.
So any mother of color can come to the Welcome Womb Boutique, and we have donated items from the community.
I love it.
Diapers, wipes, baby clothing, baby equipment, postpartum supplies. They can come and shop the boutique for free.
Right.
Yeah.
And how do we figure out? How do we find out more information about that on your site?
On the website, yeah. Just call and let us know if when you think you might be coming. But yeah,
birthsisterscville.org is where all the info goes. And we get support on the show from the folks at the United Way of Greater Charlottesville. So if you like what you hear, share this with your friends. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform for new episodes every week. And as was already stated, the best way to help us continue to support our work is to find those buttons on our sites, find those donate buttons, and that helps us continue to do our work and, of course, this show. Shout out to Ravi. You got married recently.
Shout out, Ravi. Congrats.
Sometime. Is she married yet?
Yeah, she's married.
She's married? Mm-hmm. Congratulations to Ravi. Got married. For Doreen, Lisa, and Marky, this is Price.
Bye.
We'll see you next week.
Bye. Thanks
for having us.